Hello. Today's stories come from r/MaliciousCompliance. We've got 3 stories today. First up, you want eye contact? Okay, sir. Background. I used to work retail in a DVD CD store that rhymes with manatee in Australia. We had computers that we could use to find certain titles, artists in the store if we had it in stock, or we could even order from any of the other 300 plus stores in the country and have it shipped to the store. Many people would use this for older CDs or collector items that were harder to get. One day, an older bloke came in asking about a certain smaller 80s rock band that I can't remember. I looked on the computer for him and was able to track down their album names, which of those albums he wanted, located the album in stores around the country, and got his details to enter into the computer for when the albums arrived in store so that we could contact him. He thanked me and said that he was so happy that we could get these albums in for him and left the store. The next day, I get called into the boss's office because of a customer complaint. It was and is my only ever complaint in any job for the past 9 years of working. He had rang up and complained that while my service was lovely, I didn't make enough eye contact when I was using the computer. Cue malicious compliance. 3 days later, he came in because he had another band he wanted to order. Luckily, I was working. As soon as he walked in, I greeted him with the biggest smile and locked him straight in the eyes. When he asked for if we had any of his band in stock, I typed it into the computer while maintaining direct eye contact. It took me about 4 tries to find the right keyboard letters, as I wasn't that great at touch typing. He was starting to get annoyed, but he didn't voice it. Then I had to search what store location these albums were at. That took another couple of attempts to type. I turned the computer monitor around to the point it looked like it was going to snap off. I had to move displays from the counter, which took more time, but finally I was able to set it up at such an angle that I could read it off with a quick glance, but also still maintain eye contact. At this point, he started to squirm and look away, but I was only beginning. Next was his details and taking his deposit, normally $10. It took me a solid 6 attempts to enter his details into the system, as you had to select each box to type in, and that was hard considering I wasn't looking. At this point, he had gone rather quiet and was looking at his shoes. When he handed me his money, I still maintained direct eye contact and even dropped it accidentally out of my hand, which then led me to awkwardly slap around on the counter until my hand found it. Wouldn't want to break that eye contact looking for a few coins. After all the typing attempts, it took me an extra 10 minutes to serve him, all because I couldn't look at what I was doing. To this day, I've seen him a couple of times, but he won't come to my register and he doesn't make eye contact or hides in the aisles until I'm busy with another customer. A shame, really. He had such lovely brown eyes. Well played, OP. I think this is hilarious. Some people are so ridiculous. Not enough eye contact? Seriously? I think my favorite image is of OP slapping the counter awkwardly, blindly in search of the coins. Let's see what others had to say. There are some interesting comments from all across the map. Elman said, "How do people have time to complain? I don't even have time to do my own stuff, let alone complain about crap." Burn Driftwood said, "Right? And for something as small as this, too. I don't go into a store looking to make a lasting friendship. I go in to get what I want and get out as quickly as possible. I actually prefer the blunt, no conversation approach my local Pizza Hut has. Name, phone number, what can I get you? $25.60. Thank you. Bye." The whole conversation. Every single time, it's to the point and it's glorious. Someone else said, "The error here by the manager was passing the complaint along. People will always complain about things. Your job as a manager is to sift through the complaints for areas that are valid items to bring up with your staff, and otherwise brush off or ignore the rest. The same goes for when you're a middle manager. Your job is to shelter your staff from crap so that they can get their jobs done. So if someone from another team or upper management wants your team to do something or do things differently, your job is to take on the items that are reasonable and feasible and push back on the rest. So many managers don't seem to realize that your primary job function is to be a crap umbrella so that your staff don't get distracted by it." Mang Mao said, "What's with some people and eye contact? I had a customer at a store I worked at complain to my manager that I was being rude because I was looking at the computer screen instead of him. I was a cashier. Like, bruh, do you want me to scan something a few times extra?" Someone replied, "It's just a really easy way to be a dork, to be honest. Anyone who demands to be looked in the eyes is the type of person nobody wants to interact with, so they avoid eye contact. Cue the temper tantrum." Our second story wasn't as funny as the first, but I love the attitude. My friend's cousin complied with his cool family's demands. This happened a while back, maybe 3 to 4 years ago. My college friend told me about how his cousin basically screwed over his family by moving out when they told him to. Note: to make it easier to follow, I'm going to use fake names: cousin, Jack; cousin's sister, Tina; cousin's parents, Bob and Mary. So Jack is roughly 28 and still living with his parents, but he pays their bills: electrical, water, internet, etc. And this is a big 2-story house, so the bill is big too. His sister, 24, had left the house by then and gotten married to a guy that makes good money. She had taken credit for paying the bills and convinced Bob and Mary to kick him out because he's a shut-in loser, because none of them understood his job. A bit of backstory on their parents. My friend tells me they're like those stereotypical teens in those cliche high school movies. Basically, they look down on nerds and think people who study hard are uncool, that type of thing. Anyway, they kept that mentality even after growing up and having kids, so they always looked down on Jack for being nerdy and favorited Tina because she was pretty and popular in high school. But apparently, Jack didn't really care because his personal life had friends he cared about and he connected more with his relatives. So they all confront him, and after badmouthing him about how he stays in his room mostly and how his sister, her husband and child need the space, told him he has till the end of the month to leave. This was done close to the first week. Jack didn't say a word, he just nodded and left by the end of that week and moved 3 cities away to a city closer to his other relatives. 2 months go by, and his sister calls him asking why this month's bills weren't paid, as their lights and water had been shut off. He tells her that she should have paid them since she was allegedly paying them before. About a week goes by and he gets a call from his parents, explaining how his sister confessed to everything and how he can come back and have his old room back, so long as he kept helping them pay the bills. He refused, saying he's enjoying living by himself now and how he can focus on his work more because he's away from them. Afterwards, he blocked their numbers and now they have to pay for it themselves. He doesn't know what happened after because they're no longer invited to family gatherings. I have to say, I got a little excited for Jack. His new life, away from his toxic parents and sister, sounds like he's going to be way better off without them. Their request for him to leave was just the nudge he needed to put some boundaries in place. On to the comments where OP provides more details about his friend's situation. Bernie Floyd asked, if Tina's husband makes good money and they just moved in with the parents, why can't they pay the electric bill? I mean, it can't be that much, especially compared to rent or a mortgage somewhere else. OP replied, the husband makes enough to just barely cover the bills, and they're all still there apparently. But what me and my friend don't understand about her plan? Why the heck did you think Jack would still pay the bills after getting kicked out? Coder Joe 1 said, kick out the golden goose and complain about the missing eggs. Someone replied, the cool thing about most of the versions of the story of the goose that lays the golden eggs is that the man who owns the goose kills it and guts it to locate the source of the gold. Alas, he ends up with a table full of goose guts and he's eliminated the source of his fortune. Cedar Hill said, how can anyone, especially if they are the parents, live in a household and not know how much it costs and where the money is coming from? Amazing. Someone replied, his parents and sisters sound like the peaked in high school crowd. Would it shock you that they never learned basic adulting? On to our third story, which brings us back to our roots of corporate shenanigans. You only pay mileage for the shortest possible trip? Okay, then you have to pay my tolls. At my job, every day I have to travel between 2 offices. I start at my main office, then have to travel to the second office, then back to my main office. Because I'm using my personal vehicle for this travel, the company pays me mileage. Well, there are basically 2 routes you can take between the 2 offices. One is about a mile round trip shorter, but has tolls. So I always took the 1 mile longer route and avoid the tolls. I did it this way for a year. Well, in comes the new bookkeeper, and she is hellbent on saving the company money. And where does she think all this wasteful money is going? Expense reports, obviously. So she starts nitpicking every report. Like if someone is out and has to buy some pens for work, she goes online and finds the cheapest price possible for those pens and only reimburses for that cheaper price. It obviously has pissed several people off. Well, she eventually decided to target me. I submit my report for 2 weeks and a few days later get the reimbursement payment. Well, it's $5.85 short. I ask her about it, and she says I've been ripping off the company for the past year by taking the longer route between the offices. She will only pay mileage for the shorter route from now on. And I'm lucky she doesn't go back and take back all the extra from the past year. I say, okay, but to please send me that per her, I must take the shorter route and that this is company policy and leave her office. Before I even made it to my desk, I had the email from her confirming what she said. 2 weeks later, I submit my expense report. I reported the shorter route, so the company saved $5.85. But tolls added up to $136, a net loss for the company of $130.15. It's been 6 months and I'm still taking the shorter route, costing the company an extra $130.15 every 2 weeks. Oh gosh, the ego of this woman. You know she's looking at every report and she can't swallow her pride and admit that maybe she misjudged the situation. Typical, am I right? There's an excellent anecdote from someone in the comments with a pretty hilarious username. Let's check it out. My boss thinks I'm working had this to say: if they ask you to change to your former route, please make sure you demand you will only do it after they reimburse you the $5.85 that they stole from you. Someone replied, malicious compliance and petty revenge at the same time. Almaca said, any company that's counting their pens is a company about to go under. MP Boom Boom replied, just waiting for the malicious compliance from the person who got stiffed on the pens. 3 months from now, a contract is delayed because someone didn't have a pen and waited for the cheapest option to ship to the office. Dagger Trout added, the best thing about the cheap pens, too, is half of them are dead out of the box. PM Me Your Nipples had this to share. I once had to justify the concept of traffic to an accountant. At that company, we weren't allowed to make our own travel plans. The travel department picked the cheapest flight that vaguely fit the requested schedule. One time, I was running late leaving the office, so I took a toll highway instead of the normal route to the airport because there was much less traffic. The 407 instead of the 403 in the Toronto area, if you're familiar. After I filed that expense report, on paper of course, because Expensify costs too much, I got an email from someone I had never heard from before. Why are there tolls? Those are very expensive. You should have taken the other route. Also, why did you have to park a car if you were going home? Well, I was booked by the travel department on the last flight of the night. I was running late and saw that there was a lot of traffic on the normal route. I figured that a $45 toll would be cheaper than a new flight. Please see the attached email from this person's boss confirming that I could park a company car for the weekend because it was cheaper than a taxi both ways. After several days. Okay, fine, but don't do it again. Also, in the future, please use this website to get a coupon for the airport parking garage because you went over on that too. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.